Good day, everyone. I am Vanessa Llano, and I will be your teacher for today's lesson. So our topic for today is about 21st century literary genres. So next slide, please. So as we dig deeper into the topic, expect that you'll be encountering this outline that you can see in the discussion, the introduction, discussion, activities, and assessment during and after the lesson. Next one. So before we proceed to the lesson proper, let us have first an activity. So the first question is, what is or are the words that comes in your mind when you hear the word literature? Anyone? How about you, Mary Joy Villasquez? What comes in your mind when you hear the word literature?
Books.
Books. Good. Anyone? Michelle? Are you talking, Miss Arnelia? We can't hear you. Let's have Miss Angelica.
Ano po, piece of writing.
Yes, piece of writing, exactly. So anyone? Fatima? What comes in your mind when you hear the word literature? Pass. Okay, so okay, now let's proceed to the next question. Give an example of a genre in literature and kindly explain it briefly, just a brief explanation of what does it mean. Okay, let's start with Ms. Villasquez. Can you give an example of a genre in literature?
Non-fiction. Okay, non-fiction tells the story. Non-fiction.
Again?
Non-fiction.
Okay.
So basically, non-fiction tells the story of real events. It is stated fact. Example of it are biographies, autobiographies, and others.
Okay, very good. So anyone, another one? Okay, let's have Miss Angelica.
Horror fiction po.
Okay.
When we say horror or horror fiction, it meant to scare, startle, shock, or even repulse the readers po.
Thank you. So now let us proceed to the lesson proper. Next slide, please. So let's start with the major literary genre. So I know we've done it before, so let's just a simple recap with this. So next slide po, please. So for the first major literary genres, we have the poetry. When we say poetry, it is an imaginative awareness of experience expressed through meaning, sound, and rhythmic language choices to evoke an emotional response. So mostly in this poetry, the words or the language are expressed through lines. We have, yes, through lines and stanza. So we have this what we call free verse, and there's also a formal structure. So in this in poetry, most usually the language used is heightened. This is this is more on expressing the emotions of the writer. So next, please, next slide po. So next is the genre. So when we say the genre, usually it is expressed expressed in prose or verse, presenting in dialogue or pantomime a story involving conflict, more contrast of a character, especially intended to be acted on a stage. So genre, it's kind of a play. When we say play, those are the literature or that is presented on the stage, wherein we can see there is a conflict between the characters, protagonist or antagonist. So next, please. Next is the fiction. Can somebody read this one, please? Villasquez, can you read the fiction?
Fiction is literature created from the imagination, not presented as fact, though it may be based on truth story or situation. Types of literature fiction include novel, short story, and novella.
Okay, thank you. So when we say fiction, it is it comes from our imagination, meaning it is not factual, though some of the stories are based on a true story, but it is not factual at all. So in this fiction, it includes novels, short story, and other literary piece. So next, please. So the last one for the four major literary genres, we have the nonfiction. If the fiction comes from our imagination, the nonfiction is what we call the factual fiction. It is based on facts and the author's opinion about the subject. So its purpose, the purpose of this nonfiction is to inform, to persuade, or to convince the readers. So some of the examples of this are biographies, articles from textbooks, magazines, newspapers, from journals, and essay. So always remember that a fiction is factual and based on facts, based on true facts about the subject. Whereas the fiction, it is non-factual and it comes from the imagination. So next, please. Now let us proceed to the 21st 21st century literary genres. Okay, next book, next slide. So first we have the illustrated novel. Can someone read this one, all the bullets? Miss Arnelia, can you read all the bullets? Michelle, are you talking? We can't hear you, Michelle. We can't hear you po. Okay, sige, late. I think Michelle is having a technical difficulty. So let's have Miss Angelica first.
Illustrated novel, story through text and illustrated images. 50% of the narrative is presented without words, and the reader must interpret the images to comprehend the story completely. Textual portions are presented in traditional form, and some illustrated novels may contain no text at all, span all genres.
Excuse me. So when we say illustrated novel, this kind of piece or literary piece is most commonly written and most commonly expressed through images, though there are texts, but the texts are limited. So and it says here that some of the illustrated novel has no text at all, meaning those are all expressed, the message of the literary piece are expressed through images or pictures. So example of this illustrated novel is The Invention of Hugo, Cabret by Brian Selnick, and The Arrival of Sean Tan. So you can search on that, okay? Please. Next slide po. Okay, so Miss Villasquez, could you read the next slide po? and kindly briefly explain what you've learned from it. Is she here? Miss Velasquez, can you hear us?
No, wait lang, may putol-putol.
You're
Okay.
fine, you're fine.
VG fiction, triple media literature, combine three book, movie, video, internet websites. To get the full story, students must engage in navigation, reading, viewing, in all three forms. As far as I know, digifiction is written for and read on computer based or online based. It can be up like one of the example of it is ebooks and then Wattpad as it discursive conceptual complexity to the digital medium and would lose something of it to uh, to facilitate the flow of the story. Copy.
Okay. Okay, continue, Miss Velasquez.
That's
Okay, I think Miss Villas is having a trouble in her internet connection. So just like what Miss Villasquez said, when we say digifiction, it includes those three media: book, movie, video, and internet websites. For example, yung sinabi niya na ebook or Wattpad. So alam naman natin ngayon na as nowadays the attention span of the learners or of the person gets shorter and shorter. So that's why this digifiction is also important, because in this we do not just read, because there are, it says here that it can be in the movie, for example, a book a movie from a book adaptation. So yes, that's it. That includes all those that it engages the students through reading and viewing in those all three forms: the book, movie, and video, or video and internet website. So next slide, please. So for the next one, can someone read this one? All the bullets. Yes, Michelle. Yes.
Graphic novel. It is a narrative in comic book format. Narrative work in which the story is conveyed to the reader using a comic form. The term is employed broadly manner encompassing nonfiction works and thematically linked short stories as well as fictional stories across a number of genres.
Okay, thank you. So when we say graphic novel, the story is conveyed or is expressed through a comic form. So you've seen a comic form, right? Already, where we can see there are graphic characters, may mga bubbles for their dialogues. So in short, graphic novel is more like of a manga story. Okay, so next please, we're going to talk about manga. Okay, who's raising? Someone's raising your hand. Wait, I can see you. Okay. Yes, Michelle.
Okay, manga is a Japanese word for comics. It is used in the English-speaking world as a generic term for all comic books and graphic novels originally published in Japan. It is considered as an artistic and storytelling style. A merry manga, sometimes used to refer to comics created by American artists in manga style.
Okay, so when you say manga, just like the graphic novel, it is also expressed through comics. So if so it too is adapted from the Japanese word manga for comics. So example of mangas are We have Doraemon, if you've seen it already. Doraemon, Hello Kitty, another Naruto. It's shonen. Yes, it's an example of a manga from Japan. So next, please. I can see the screen. Wait lang. I can see the screen. I think I'm having trouble with my internet connection. Wait. Okay, there. So next is the doodle fiction. So when we say doodle fiction, literary presentation, where the author incorporates doodle writing and drawings and handwritten graphics in place of the traditional font. So drawing enhances the story, often adding humorous elements. So when we say doodle, yung parang ano, it's okay. So ano ba so example na lang ng doodle fiction. So example of this is if you've seen the book The Diary of the Wimpy Kid by Jeff Kinney and Timmy Failure by Stephen Pastis. Okay, so when we say doodle fiction, it incorporates more on doodle writing and drawings in a literary piece. So I suggest you search for a Diary of a Wimpy Kid because I forgot to put it in the slide. So next po, please. Okay, Miss Angelica, could you read and briefly explain what you've learned from that genre? Miss Angelica?
Text novels are blogs, emails, and IM format narratives. These are stories told almost entirely in dialogue, simulating social networks exchanges based on the description presented on the screen. Text talk novels is one of the modern ways of writing stories and novel, and the medium for this is kind of literature that is limited to email, SMS, or and messenger or other social network sites.
Yes, thank you. So in short, when you say text of novels, it is most commonly expressed through social media, just like what you said, through blogs, email, and other social media platform where they can write literary piece. Okay, so next slide, please. So many of this. Okay, so chicklet or chick literature. So it is a genre of fiction which addresses issues of modern womanhood, often humorously and lightheartedly. So chicklet typically features a female protagonist whose femininity is heavily thermalizing in the plot. Yes. Okay. So most commonly in this chicklet chick literature are the protagonists are most commonly a woman. It what do you mean? It sometimes presents the femininity of all the women. So example of this is the Scarlett Bailey's The Night Before Christmas and Miranda Dickinson's It Started with a Kiss. Okay, so next please. Okay. So Fatima, are you there? Can you read the slide, please? Read the slide lang po.
Flash fiction is a style of fictional literature of extreme brevity. There is no widely accepted definition of the length at category. It could range from word to 1,000.
Okay, thank you. So you say flash fiction, it is a type of fiction that is a short, is shorter than a short story. So it says here that the length of this fiction could ranges from a word to 1,000. So example of this ano bang example? I can think of an example of this. Basta this flash fiction is usually shorter than a short story. Okay, so it ranges from a word to 1,000 of words. Next slide, please. Angge, do we still have time, Angge?
Yes, we still have 5 minutes.
Okay. So next is the 6-word flash fiction. So if the flash fiction is the ranges of its length ranges from a word to 1,000 of words, this 6-word flash fiction is way more shorter. So just 6-word flash fiction, that's the example on the screen. Ernest Hemingway, for sale, baby socks never worn. So if we are going to read that one, we can understood it, though it is too short. So it means for the first one, it means that there's a baby socks that has never worn for sale. It's for sale, right? Though it is very short, but we can still understand what is it is what it is trying to convey. So the next example we have if we say Margaret Atwood longed for him, got him. Okay, so 6-word flash fiction, it's way shorter than a flash fiction, but the meaning or the thought can still be understood. So next slide, please. Okay. Can you have Miss Arnelia to read the what's the next slide po?
Creative nonfiction. It is also known as literary nonfiction or narrative nonfiction, a genre of writing that uses literary styles and techniques to create factually accurate narratives. As a genre, creative nonfiction is still relatively young and is only beginning to be scrutinized with the same critical analysis given to fiction and poetry.
Okay, thank you. So when we say creative nonfiction, as we all know, nonfiction it is based on a true subject or a factual subject. So when we say creative fiction, it is it is a fiction that uses literary styles and techniques to create factually correct narratives. So just like any other nonfiction literature, just like the other nonfiction literature. So since this creative nonfiction is relatively young and is only beginning to be scrutinized, the same critical analysis given to fiction and poetry. Okay, next po. Tapos na tayo, patapos na din yung time. So when we say here, in science fiction, okay, so the genre of fiction, the genre of speculative fiction dealing with imaginative concepts such as futuristic science and technology. So in this science fiction, it is more focused on the advancement or development of science and technology. So for example of this is the space travel, time travel, faster than light travel, a parallel universe, and extraterrestrial life. So usually this science fiction happens in the future. Let's say yes, this is usually happens in the future that focus on the science and technological development. So example of this not science fiction is Susan Collins Mockingjay and Sarah Maas Kingdom of Ash. Okay, next slide po. We're almost done and the time is we're running out of time. Okay. Miss Angelica, could you read the next slide po?
Blog. A web blog or a website containing short articles called posts that are changed regularly. Some blogs are written by one person containing their own opinions, interests, and experiences, while others are written by different people.
Okay. So where was that blog? So usually when we say blog or web blog, it is usually expressed through social media, right? If you can see in the Facebook where they write their or express their opinion about things or such, their interests and experiences. Okay, next po. Do we still have time, Angelica?
Less than 1 minute na lang.
We can end the slide I mean the meeting na lang, tapos we can
Yes. Create newly.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes po. Dito muna tayo, tapos end muna natin. Okay, so for next literary 21st century literary genre, we have hyper poetry. Could someone read those bulleted forms? Fatima, could you read those, all of those 3 bullets? Are you there? Okay.
Digital poetry that uses links using hypertext markup. It can either involve set words, phrases, lines, etc. that are presented in variable order but sit on the page much as traditional poetry does, or it can contain parts of poem that move and mutate. It is usually found online through CD-ROM, and this Kate's version exists. The earliest example date to no later than the mid 1980s.
Okay, thank you. So when we say hyper poetry, it uses a computer based in writing their poetry, and usually they publish it using social media platforms. Its difference in poetry is when we say poetry, the writer, the poet uses their imaginations using the traditional platform, they just wrote it, I mean write it using inks, pencil, and pens. Whereas this hyper poetry, it is computer based. They use computer in writing their poetry and in publishing it. Okay, so next po. So again, what differs in hyper poetry and poetry is the platform that they've used in writing their poetry or in expressing their thoughts and opinions. Okay, so before we proceed to the activity, do you have any clarifications, questions, violent reactions? Anyone? Anyone po? Do you have any clarifications po, questions?
None po.
None po.
None. Okay, so thank you. So now let us proceed to our activity. Let's find out. So the direction is to choose the best answer from the choices given. Okay, next slide, please. So Michelle, could you read number 1 and try to guess the answer?
It is a collection of written and oral works to delight and to entertain. A, literature, B, poetry, C, fiction, or D, text talk novels. A, literature.
Exactly correct. So we say literature, it is a collection of written and oral works to delight and entertain. Okay, so number 2, Miss Villases, could you read and answer question number 2? Are you there, Miss Villases? Can you hear me? I think she's having a trouble again with her internet connection. Okay, number 2, Miss Fatima, could you read and answer question number 2?
What is the literary genre that deals with imaginative concepts such as futuristic, science and technology, space travel, time travel faster than light travel, a parallel universe, and extraterrestrial life? A. Fiction. B. Graphic novel. C. Nonfiction. D. Science fiction. Letter D.
Letter D. Are you sure?
Yes, ma'am. Science travel.
Let's answer is correct. It's science fiction. It deals with futuristic development of science and technology. Okay, next slide, please. Can I have Miss Gonzalez to read and answer question number 3?
It is also known as literary nonfiction or narrative nonfiction. A. Doodle fiction. B. Flash fiction. C. Creative nonfiction. D. Graphic novel. C. Creative nonfiction.
Yes, exactly. It's the letter C. Very good. Next slide, please. For our number 4, can we Miss Villases, can you hear us? Could you read and answer question number 4? She's not here yet. Okay, Miss Arnelia, again, could you read and answer question number 4?
It is a narrative work in which the story is conveyed to the reader using a comic form. A. Digifiction. B. Graphic novel. C. Chick literature. And D. Manga. D. Manga.
Is it correct? Manga? I think it's graphic novel. A narrative work. Yes, it's the same as manga, but the answer is graphic novel. Okay, thank you, Miss Arnelia. Okay, for number 5, again, could you read and answer, Miss Angelica?
It is an imaginative awareness of experience expressed through meaning, sound, and rhythmic language choices to evoke an emotional response. Rhythmic, poetry.
You're not sure? Okay, very good, Angelica. It's poetry. It's an imaginative awareness of experience. Okay, yes, it's poetry. Thank you. Very good. Okay, so for the last, before we thank you. So before we end this topic, this lesson topic, let us have first a short reflection. Okay, just give an insight of how literature or the literary genres affects our life today, or you can just express your insights about the topic, your learnings about the topic. Started, Miss Arnelia. Can you give us your insight about our topic or about the discussion? What have you learned?
I learned that literature is plays a important role in our life, and as well as the knowing the literary genres in such a way that by literature we can have an understanding of the author's perspective, and we can also learn about many words like vocabulary words.
Okay, thank you, Miss Arnelia. Okay, Miss Fatima, could you give us your insight or what you've learned in today's discussion? Just your what have you learned or you remembered? Just your insight, if you have. Okay. I think she's having a internet connection trouble. Okay, so Miss Angelica, could you give us your insight of what you've learned from the topic discussion?
I discovered that there are numerous literary genres that play various roles in writings. Moreover, literature and these literary genres informs us and helps us comprehend various aspects of life. Stories, dramas, poetries, or narratives in particular elicit, for example, empathy, and provide us with a fresh perspective on our own and other people lives. Literature also has an impact on individuals by teaching, entertaining, and encouraging us to take action in our lives.
Okay, thank you, Miss Angelica, Miss Arnelia. Thank you to all of you. So even me, after having this lesson discussed, I've also learned because before I thought the only genres of literature that we have are those science fiction, horror, romance, comedy. I've never known that we can have 21st century literary genres. Okay, so what else? Okay, so that ends our topic discussion for today. I just want to say thank you for attending, Miss Arnelia, Miss Gonzalez, Miss Llano, and Miss Villasquez. So thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for being my students for today's topic discussion. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you po. I hope you learned something from the topic discussion.
Yes po, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you po.